You're listening to the Online Business Blueprint brought to you by PlatformLaunchers.com. I'm John Stange, and it's great to have you this week, or have you with us this week, as always, because here we talk about building and growing and monetizing your online platform. We talk about taking your passion, turning it into a platform so that you can earn a paycheck. And this week, we're talking about knowing what to agree to and what to avoid in life and business. It's certainly an important topic. It's also something that I've been personally thinking about a lot lately. And maybe it's something that if you're listening or if you're watching us on YouTube, maybe this is the type of thing that you've been thinking about as well. I will let you know before I dive into this week's content. We have a whole bunch of stuff to help you build, grow, and monetize your online platform over at platformlaunchers.com. But if you're looking to do that in community, we have our members club. And I want to highlight the fact that if you go to the membership page at platformlaunchers.com, you can take a 2-week test drive of our monthly membership. And you'll be able to interact with a whole bunch of people that are building, growing, and monetizing their online platforms. You'll get access to a whole bunch of video training and all sorts of things. And so we hope you'll check it out. It's on the membership page right over at the website. Definitely look at it. But this week, our subject, knowing what to agree to and what to avoid in life and business. Let me just start off by mentioning this. This is something that I think you'll probably identify with if you just have this entrepreneurial mindset. But I have to confess to you that I'm one of those people who likes to make other people happy. And I think many of us operate in this particular way, particularly those of us who run online businesses that have a service component. So if you have an online business that has a service component, I'm certain that you probably like to make other people happy. We aim to please. We aim to satisfy. If something is not going well, we attempt to correct it. And at the end of the day, I find a sense of pleasure. You probably find a sense of pleasure in making the lives of other people better. I absolutely want to do that. I'm certain that many of you who are listening to the show this week can probably say that you like to make the lives of other people better as well. It's very satisfying. It's very gratifying. It's something that is really a blessing to be able to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually, I think, a very good thing. I would actually contend that if we didn't maintain an attitude of others-centered service, I think it'd be very unlikely for our businesses to succeed. If you don't have an others-centered attitude and a desire to serve other people and try and meet their needs and make their life a little bit better, I think it's probably going to be very difficult for your overall platform to succeed if that's not something that motivates you. But what do you do when you find yourself facing some unreasonable expectations? Or maybe I could ask this a little differently. How do you handle people or tasks that drain your energy or waste your time? Are there things maybe that you're even agreeing to that you might want to reconsider? And kind of coming back to our overall theme, what should you be saying yes to and what should you be saying no to? These are some things that I want us to be thinking about this week. I have to tell you that the older I get, the more discerning I think I'm becoming when it comes to my yeses and my nos. I'm trying to operate with a lot of discernment in that area because my lack of discernment in these areas during an earlier season of life actually led to a lot of frustration. And I would say a lack of productivity in certain areas. And so that's a mistake that I certainly don't want to repeat over and over and over again all throughout the course of my life. Certainly a mistake I don't want to repeat at this season of life. It's my goal right now to be as productive and effective as I can be in both life and business. And so I don't want a whole bunch of things that would just have me kind of running around in circles or wasting time that could be used more productively. So that being said, if this is something that resonates with you, if this is something that you've wrestled with, and you want to be as productive as possible, and you want to get as much done as you could possibly get done, and you want to make sure that you're focused on the right things, I have a few thoughts that I want to offer on this subject, and I hope you'll find these thoughts helpful. I will admit to you ahead of time that they are easier to hear and agree to than they are to implement. And many people that I interact with, people who are attempting to build online businesses, people who are attempting to build online platforms, there are many people who do not implement these things, even though they would, I would say, agree with most of them, if not all of them. I want to encourage you to be different. If you are listening to what I'm saying right now, be an implementer of these concepts. And let me just start off by giving us things that I believe we should say yes to. So we're talking about what should we be saying yes to and what should we be saying no to? What should we agree to? What should we avoid? Well, let's start with the say yes category. What should we be saying yes to? Well, number one on my category list is this: say yes to opportunities and ideas that align with your passions and gifts. Over time, I'm sure you've become more and more aware of where you're gifted and what you're passionate about. Lean into that. As you become aware of what you're passionate about, what you're gifted in, lean into that. Say yes to the opportunities that come your way that fit with that alignment. I'll give you an example of something that took place a couple years ago when I really had an opportunity to test this idea of saying yes to the opportunities and the ideas that align with your passions and your gifts. Well, a couple of years ago, I received an email from a well-established media company that had apparently been following my content and wanted to partner together with me. And so they reached out to me. That the guy sending the email actually sent. There was a small video in it, and he was holding up a sign that had my name on it, so I could tell that it was personalized content. And as I looked at this email and I read the content of what he had to say and got in touch with them, this wasn't a relationship that I had been seeking. But as the opportunity was presented to me, I could immediately see the mutual benefit that could come from it. So I was absolutely intrigued. And in the end, it ended up being an opportunity that aligned extremely well with my passions. It aligned extremely well with my gifts. And so I said yes. So, principle number one, say yes to the opportunities and ideas that align with your passions and gifts. And I have to tell you, 2 years into this partnership, it's going very, very well. But another say yes category is this: say yes to actions. And I really hope this might be the most important of all the things I'm going to share tonight. But I don't know. I guess it depends on where you are in your journey. But number two on my list is this: of things to say yes to. Say yes to actions that have produced positive results in the past. So let me say that again because I think it's really critical. Say yes to actions that have produced positive results in the past. Now, if you know me well, if you've been following my content, if you've been following what I've been doing online, you know that when it comes to online platform development, online business development, I am a big fan of experimenting with many new ideas. And my heart is not easily broken when I discover something that doesn't work, because I think that in the process of making that discovery, I'm also inevitably going to discover some things that do work well. But if the audience you're presently serving, so think of these people that you're currently serving, if they keep coming back to you for the same kind of content, if they keep coming back to you for the same kind of services, you need to start offering more of what your audience wants. And I'm going to give you a prime example of what this looks like. It's not in the online world, it's more in the day-to-day world, the terrestrial world. But it's honestly, it possibly one of the most perfect examples I can give to you of this idea of noticing what your audience keeps coming back for. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to eat at McDonald's. My guess is that if you're in the United States, you've probably eaten there at least once. But when the McDonald's brothers first established their restaurant decades ago, they had a vast menu. They had all sorts of things on it. I think they originally called their restaurant, it was more of like a barbecue joint, they would call it, but they had a whole bunch of other things. And then as they started analyzing what they had on their menu, they started noticing that about 80% of their sales were really just coming from people who were buying their hamburgers. And their hamburgers weren't the main thing on their menu. They were selling barbecue sandwiches. That was their main thing, and some of the other things that went along with that. But they noticed that people were buying their hamburgers. And so as they started thinking about this inspired them to simplify their menu. And they decided, we're just going to be a hamburger place because that's what people keep telling us they want. So they focused on what was working. And as you could see, it took off rather nicely from there. They also had some help from a man named Ray Kroc, who came in and kind of masterminded what happened next. But it really wouldn't have been anything special if they hadn't initially noticed that about 80% of their sales were coming from people buying their hamburgers. They focused on what was working. They noticed what people kept coming back for, and they did more of that. And I think even as online entrepreneurs, we're not selling hamburgers, we're not selling barbecue sandwiches, we're not selling food, but I think there's a major lesson for us there. Notice what's working. Say yes to actions that have been producing positive results. Say yes to actions that have produced positive results in the past. Here's another category of something to say yes to in addition to that, though. Say yes to the people that you feel specifically called to serve. Now, I find entrepreneurs who have a heart for others inspiring. And as your business grows, you're obviously going to experience all kinds of benefits. But to get there, you need to serve others well. And I would suppose that if you gave it some thought, you could probably describe for me your ideal client or just the ideal person that you're called to serve. Keep saying yes to serving the people that you are specifically called to serve. You're going to find great delight in doing that. You're also going to find that it helps you sustain what you're doing long term because you feel a specific calling, a leading to serve a particular segment of the overall audience that you can connect with in this world. Say yes to the people that you feel specifically called to serve. So 3 categories of things to say yes to. Say yes to the opportunities and the ideas that align with your passions and gifts. Say yes to the actions that have produced positive results in the past. And say yes to the people that you feel specifically called to serve. But now let's flip this on its head here and just kind of think about this from another angle. There are also times to say no. Well, what should we be saying no to? If we want to be productive entrepreneurs, if we want to build an online marketplace or an online platform or an online business that really has the capacity to take off and serve people well and feed our family and meet our needs and meet the needs of other people at the same time, well, in addition to saying yes to certain things, there's certain things that we should be saying no to. And the first thing on my list of say no to this happens to be task oriented, but I would encourage you to say no to the tasks and the activities that drain your energy to the point of bitterness and resentment. Say no to the tasks and the activities that drain your energy to the point of bitterness and resentment. Now, if you're a people pleaser, this can be very difficult to do. This can be a very difficult lesson to learn, but it's extremely important. I have to tell you, just personally speaking, and those of you that know me outside of my online platform could probably testify to this as well. I personally find it much easier to say yes to people than to say no. But I've also learned over time that every time I say yes to one thing, that really does mean that I'm automatically saying no to something else. So every yes, in a sense, is a no. But I have to tell you, I'm going through, I don't know, it's kind of like an interesting stretch, and I feel a little bit ruthless as I do this. But at present, I'm in the process of eliminating a series of tasks and a series of activities that drain my energy to a point that were I to continue those activities or those tasks, I'm actually concerned that I might develop a sort of bitter or resentful attitude. And as I notice that that's the case, I'm thinking to myself, I actually think I just need to make some changes with some of these things. So I have to say, giving myself during this season of life permission to start saying no more than I'm saying yes to things. I've started to say no to things, and I've actually started to add a little bit more margin back into my schedule. I have to admit, it's been rather fun. So I just want to encourage you, if you're, someone who delights to say yes to people like I do, there's a time to say no, but let's just start with saying no to certain tasks and activities that are draining your energy. Like I said, to the point where if you kept doing them, you might start developing like a bitter root or just like a feeling of resentment that would be very unhealthy. So say no to those things. You don't want that in your life. If you notice that there's a series of those things in your life that you could eradicate, I'd encourage you to start systematically and maybe even ruthlessly start eradicating them. But number 2 on my list is this: This is my list of no's now. Say no to expending effort on actions that just aren't working. And this is going to require some brutal honesty with yourself, but say no to using your effort on actions that really aren't working. I think this is an issue that many newer entrepreneurs in particular struggle with, especially if they've been going through a season where maybe they've been listening to voices, all kinds of voices, telling them that they need to do everything under the sun for their business to succeed. But the truth is, some actions just aren't fruitful. And those actions that aren't fruitful should really be eliminated just for the sake of efficiency and maybe even for your own sanity. And I'm going to give you a prime example that may surprise you. And by the way, as I record this, there's a group of people live on the call here, members of our members club. They're live here with me as I record this. And I warned them ahead of time that this was something I was going to share. But a prime example I'll give you is this: social media. Now, why would I bring social media up in the category of actions that just aren't working? Well, first of all, I am not opposed to social media. I think social media can be very effective. And I'm also not saying that social media isn't beneficial for some businesses. But I have to tell you, it's not beneficial for everyone. Some businesses, it really helps. Other businesses, it's not quite as necessary as people seem to think it is. In fact, for some entrepreneurs, I actually think social media is, I'm not sure whether to call it a distraction or just a total waste of their time. At present, I'll give you an example what I mean by this. I'm not just going to throw that out there and not explain what I mean. But at present, I oversee several online platforms that, by God's grace, have become successful over time. They didn't become successful overnight, but over time, they became successful, again, by God's grace. And I can assure you that each of those online platforms, they were not primarily built with social media. I do use social media, and I have shared about those platforms on social media, but the primary way that those platforms were built was not with social media. And in fact, not long ago, I was actually speaking with a woman who had just spent, she was going through the details of her day and telling me some of the things that she had been working on. And she had just told me that she had just spent several hours of that particular day creating some short form video that she believed would help promote her online platform, and I certainly hope that it would. But when she told me how much time she was spending on it, I thought, boy, that seems like a disproportionate amount of time. It seemed like she was trying to make it a little too slick, and really, she consumed an entire day with it. And she said she then shared it on her social media channels. And then I kind of waited to see what happened. And eventually, it turned out that nothing really came of it. So she had spent all that time building what she was building for the sake of her social media, and there was nothing fruitful that came from it. It wasn't seen by very many people. She indicated that it did not really result in any additional business. So it was kind of a bust. And as I look back on that, I think, she should have, or she would have been better served by maybe writing a short blog post, something that would stick around longer than a social media post, or maybe just reaching out to some clients directly and just setting up some times to chat with them on Zoom or a phone call or something like that. And so one of the things that I really think that we need to get better collectively, myself included, is to just start noticing things, actions that we've been typically taking that just really aren't working, and start saying no to expending too much effort on those things. Don't spend a day on things that really doesn't produce much fruitful results for you. Say no to expending effort on actions that just aren't working. But here's number 3 on my say no list. I hope this doesn't make me sound too mean, but if it does make me sound mean, so be it. I do mean this. I'll just say it. I think we ought to say no to certain people who, what's the best way to phrase this? I'll just say people who are disrespectful of your time, and maybe who want as much of your attention as they can get without concern of how that may negatively impact you. So people who are disrespectful of your time and really just want as much of your attention as they can get without really any concern for how that might negatively impact you or your family or your business or anything like that. I have to say, this has become a biggie for me, and I'm starting to become pretty strict about some of the lines that I draw with people like this. When I start noticing these patterns, when I start noticing these behaviors, Started to get much stricter about this than I was at an earlier season of life. In fact, at this season of my life that I'm at right now, I've actually given myself permission not to reply to people who are not respectful of my time because there's just too many of them that do this. There are people in my life whose consciences don't seem to be too troubled by interrupting holidays or vacations or a day off or time that I have dedicated to other important activities, even when they know that I've blocked off that time for other activities. It's not like some of this is being done innocently. It's like they know that, but they just think that they're more important than the other people in my life or the other things I've got going on in my life. It's really strange. Maybe you've noticed this with some people in your own life as well, but I've noticed there's some people I just have to be cautious about because they just want as much of my attention and as much of my energy as they can get. And they're willing to take as much as I'm willing to give. And at other seasons of life, I was willing to really give a lot to the point where I just kind of burned myself out. And so, as I've noticed this pattern, and it's definitely been a pattern because I really don't like disappointing people. But as I've noticed this pattern in my own life, I've become better at establishing healthy boundaries. And I will admit to you, as an online entrepreneur or someone that does entrepreneurial work in other spheres as well, this can result in criticism from time to time. If you start creating some of these boundaries, even if they're healthy boundaries, even if they're necessary boundaries, this can result in some criticism from time to time. But I have to tell you, at this season of my life, I'm actually okay with it. I'm totally fine with it. It actually, this is where it's going to make me sound mean, but I think this is the only honest way I can phrase this. I think it actually helps me repel some of the people who seem like they were never told no as a child. Is that rude? I don't know. Anyway, their drama, their selfishness. I look at that and I think it doesn't need to become a source of stress and it doesn't need to become a source of negativity for me at this season of my life. I don't need to say yes to every unreasonable demand that other people make on my life or on my time just to keep people happy. I'd love to make everybody happy, but I don't actually think that that's possible for me to do. So I look at this and I'm like, you know what? Thank you for your criticism, but you are free to remain unhappy. You are free to be unhappy. You are allowed to move on to someone else. You are allowed to disturb somebody else. And so I'm just going to normalize that. I'm just going to admit that this is something that I've been thinking about lately. And maybe this is something that you need to hear just because of some of the things that you deal with in your day to day life as well. It's okay to say no sometimes. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you mean. It doesn't make you rude if you create some healthy boundaries. So where should we say no? Well, I think we should say no to tasks and activities that drain our energy to the point of bitterness and resentment. I think we should say no to expending effort on actions that just aren't working. And I think we should say no to people who are disrespectful of our time and people who just don't have a concern for how their actions might be negatively impacting you, your life, or your business. In life and business, it's important to know when to say yes. Some good things to say yes to. It's also important to know when to say no. And if your life, if your business is going to thrive, this is an area that demands some clarity and it demands some intentionality. And so I hope that something I just shared is useful for you. It's certainly something I've been thinking about a lot lately. But the more intent I become on actually enforcing this metric that I just shared with you, the more I think my life does better. But I also notice that my online platforms, my businesses do better because I'm focused on the right thing and I'm investing in the people that I'm called to invest in. And I hope that that gives you some ideas and maybe even a little permission as you hear about some of the metric that I'm using right now to make certain judgment calls. I hope that this is helpful to you as you build what you're building online as well. Before we sign off here, I just want to remind you again to head over to platformlaunchers.com. And I just want to challenge you, take the 2-week test drive of our members club. What are you waiting for? Jump on board with us. We'd love to meet you and help you build, grow, and monetize your online platform. We have a great group of people waiting to just come alongside you and join you in that. And those that join our members club, you get all the just a ton of free content, hundreds of hours of free video content, but also our launch plan course. You get to have that for free, a whole bunch of freebies. Again, you find that at platformlaunchers.com. But that is it for us this week. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to be able to spend this time together, and we look forward to getting together with you again right here again next week. And in the meantime, take care. and we'll talk to you soon.